saying congratulations on the cost. I think it's one of those movies that people are going to be talking about for a long time after they sit down and watch it, so congratulations.
Ah, thank you. That's precisely the effect that we wanted when Greg when Greg Moss and I started writing. That's exactly the effect we wanted. We wanted it to be one of those movies that people watch and then sit around and have a coffee with their friends afterwards and discuss. We wanted it to be a conversation maker.
So, mate, tell us a little bit about where did the idea first come about? You mentioned what you and Greg wanted from the film, but where did the original idea for the film come from for you both?
Well, it actually came from the genesis of the idea came from myself, really, just from a number of places. Number one, just I read an article about someone who had whose daughter had been murdered, and that person had just been released from prison. And I thought, man, if I was that father, I'd probably want to go and get that guy once he got out of prison. And just that little thought just went, you know what? What if someone did do that? What if someone actually took vengeance and then started going down that path? I wonder, in a real life scenario, not like a Hollywood scenario, but what would that look like? And I thought that could be an interesting story. So I sort of filed that away for another day. That was probably in 2017 when I had that idea. And then when looking for something very low budget to do, I came up with this idea of sort of following that, and I've often heard a lot of people talk about the various punishments and things that they think should be bestowed upon certain criminals in society. We hear it all the time in conversations, friends, family. They all have opinions on how these people should be dealt with, and I listened to a lot of it, and I heard a lot of things from people that you think, well, that's surprising how violent and vicious yours and both my reactions are to such things, and we're normal people.
Yeah.
So I thought, there's something in that, and so I sort of took this idea to Greg, and he liked the idea of doing something sort of hard hitting and that asks some very, very difficult questions and didn't really give them an answer, and so we just launched ourselves into writing. So. Yeah.
You mentioned that you wanted to do something that had a low budget. Was that because of the way the world was at that time with COVID, that you wanted to try and find a film that you could film during that time to keep active, or what was the motivation behind doing a film like this that wasn't going to cost a lot to make?
Well, at the time, COVID had nothing to do with it because COVID hadn't hit us yet.
Yep.
The idea really came because ever since I'd finished The Legend of Ben Hur in late 2016, I've been trying to get a various number of films financed at all different budget levels, everything from $2 million films all the way up to $10 million films, and absolutely none of them were getting financed. They were all getting very close and falling over, and I got sick and tired of that, and I was having a conversation with one of the actors who ended up being one of the lead roles, and he and my partner also very much encouraged me and said, look, you've got to get back on the horse, you've got to get directing again, even if it's just something small. And I swore I would never do another no budget film again. I felt like I'd done that and I didn't want to ever do it again, but they said, well, if you can think of something really small, you can do it. So I sort of was for me just a way to keep the directing muscle from getting too weak, because it had been so many years since I'd done it, and it didn't look like there was anything on the horizon that was coming. So it was really born of that, and so we got started, and then we were about to get shooting, and we managed to pull together this little budget from a small group of investors, and then COVID hit. And we only shot a certain amount of the film, and then we had to wait it out, and then keep going once all the lockdowns were over.
So tell us a little bit too about the cast that you put together. You mentioned that one of the cast members was one of the reasons why that was pushing you to keep going and to make another film. How did you go about casting this film? Because there's some brilliant performances in this film that I'm sure are going to garnish some awards in the future.
Oh, thank you. I'm really proud of this cast. Look, it's pretty organic and very unconventional. I didn't, when I wrote it, I knew that Damon Hunter, who was a guy that I've been friends with since Ben Hall came out, and we were just good friends, had become very good friends, and he was always talking about wanting to work with me, and I wanted to work with him. It was just about what project could we do it on. So when I started writing it, I immediately knew that one of them would be him, and he loved the idea. So he was on board from the very beginning. And then the second character I wrote it for actor Jordan Fraser Trumbull, again, another actor who I've been friends with for many years. He was in The Legend of Ben Hall. And we'd been wanting to, work on other things together for years, but a lot of those projects just fell over. So I really wrote it for him, and of course gave him the script, and I told him, look, we've got no money, we're going to do it on weekends, and I know I've already asked you to do this before, but can you just come out and make this film with me for nothing? And of course he agreed to it because he really liked the part. I had an actor that I actually had in mind for the role of Troy, the person that they kidnap, but that actor turned it down, and not because they didn't like the script, they just didn't want to be that character and go through all that character had to go through on screen. It wasn't a place as an actor that they really wanted to go to, which I understood, and I submitted to another actor and they turned it down for the same reason. And it was really just Kevin I found really just by looking at actors on a website, and I saw his face and I just went, that looks like Troy. And we had mutual friends, and I asked around, and they all told me he was an excellent actor and a great person. And he gave me an audition, and in one scene of this audition, I knew he had it. I knew he was perfect for the role. So I got very lucky with Kevin. Nicole, again, another actor I just wanted to work with, and just flung it her way, and she said yes. And Clayton Watson actually stepped in at the very last minute when an actor that I was originally had cast in South Australia couldn't get over to shoot it because of the lockdowns.
Yep.
So as a last minute bid, I reached out to Clayton because we'd also been wanting to work together, and he agreed to jump on at the last minute. So sort of how it all happened. It was quite organic.
You mentioned about what Kevin went through playing Troy, and that two actors had already turned down that part. Yesterday, when I was talking to the Soska twins about their new film On the Edge, they talked about the fact that they had to go through a lot with their actor who's the victim in their film, and they almost felt like they had to give him aftercare when they finished the film. What did you have to go through working with Kevin to prepare him for that role, and what kind of things do you do after a really, really tough day shooting with some of the stuff that he had to go through?
Well, look, no one really knew how all this was going to go. I certainly had no idea how these scenes were going to play out and what we were going to be faced with. Because I'd never done anything like this before, or to this level. I just trusted the cast a lot. We had a lot, and I did tell the three boys in our first sort of script reading together, I said, the reality of this, fellas, is that this film will live and die on your performances more so than how fancy I can direct this movie and and the shots that I choose and because all of that doesn't matter here, and we're not going to have the money for that. So it's on you three to carry this. So they knew that from the very beginning, and they embraced that. As for Kevin, he knew it was going to be tough, but he's just the kind of guy that was sort of like he just performs and then turns off. He didn't go method or anything. He just switches off and does it, and then the take is over and he goes back to normal. So he didn't. He just can switch on and off like that. At least that's what I observed. And he did it without complaint and without fuss. He just did it, and that made our jobs easier because we didn't need to amp him up or wind him back down or send him to therapy afterwards.
Yep.
He suffered physically a lot because of just the exposure, being a lot of the time barefoot in the forest, half naked, and the compromising positions he was always found himself in, being bound up or being hit and, falling all the time. It was just never ending for him. But again, he was just a guy that did it without complaint and without anything. He just did it. So I was always very thankful for him, and he always just smiled and patted me on the back and said, "That's all right, mate," and laughed, and off we went. So, and that's what just made it, in a strange way, it's a pleasure working with him, because there was no problem in that way. So, yeah.
Definitely. Now, I remember I was at the Monster Fest when The Legend of Ben Hall premiered, and there was so much buzz around that year because of the fact that your film was there, and the same's happening again this year with the cost. How important are festivals like Monster Fest for you, and how do you feel about the cost premiering at Monster Fest as well?
Look, it's an honour to be back at Monster Fest, and I'm so thankful for their support and how willing they were to grab the cost and bring it on board, just like they did with The Legend of Ben Hall. It's great to be supported by a Melbourne film festival, especially considering both Ben Hall and the cost are all Melbourne-based. And what makes me especially grateful to Monster Fest for their support is because I've had such little support from other Melbourne-based film festivals, which is disappointing. So when someone like Monster Fest does sort of embrace your films, even when both Ben Hall and the cost are maybe genres that are a little bit outside of Monster Fest's normal lineup, which are usually very, sort of action or horror or something like that. And my films tend to lean towards drama a bit more. That they embrace me, that just makes me very grateful. So it's, and of course it's always wonderful to have the opportunity to have a festival show your film at a cinema, in your home city, or, other cities around Australia as well. So, no, it's fantastic.
Definitely. Now, I guess to finish off, what would you like to say to people out there who are about to sit down and watch the cost at Monster Fest?
Look, I'd like to say to them, keep an open mind and hang on for the ride. It gets ugly at times, but we have something to say and we have something we want you to think about. And I think if you can stick with us, I think you'll be rewarded in those aspects. It'll give you something to think about, and and I just hope they spread the word, and tell other people about the film, because word of mouth is the best advertising any film can ask for, especially the independent films.